Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. In light of Priscilla Kelly getting signed to NXT, congratulations, of course, by the way. It was, this is kind of nutty. Um, 2 years ago, in the first episode of Full Disclosure, uh, doesn't that seem absolutely insane? Um, I talked about something that happened in regards to Priscilla Kelly, and it was a good indication of where the channel was going to go, what I was going to do, which is to give my own takes on things. And so I know vaguely what I talked about, but I thought it would be fun to go back. Not to mention how I look, man, without the beard and all that stuff. Um, really funny. Anyway, I'm just going to take a look at this thing until while it's relevant. So,
Hey, wrestling fans.
not quite the same opening anymore.
This is the first video that's going to be like a tipping point column I used to write. Now I'm just going to do
Full
video blogs.
disclosure
It's
column
faster,
I
it's
used to write.
easier. It's easier to keep timely, and let's face it, people don't really read as much.
That's
So
still
the
true.
Priscilla Kelly thing, where she took the tampon out, put it in the girl's mouth at a wrestling show in a bar. Um, Everybody's got their take on it. It's pretty predictable, actually.
Now, keep in mind, Jim Cornette, everybody said to a man, to all the people who are considered like more important wrestling pundits, that she would never get a job because of this. She would never get hired by any of the bigs.
You have the dumb people that are like, oh, it's the worst thing ever, and it's the reason women's wrestling isn't taken seriously, and women work so hard, and shouldn't we respect that? And this is awful, and it's why people don't watch independent wrestling, and they need to respect the business. Then you have the other dumb take, which is, oh, um, she's getting her name out there. Now she's getting publicity, and it's really smart, and that's what you're supposed to do in wrestling. Here's my take. Um, and this is a very simple take, but it
I'm curious what my take exactly is going to be. The two opinions that I had heard the most, the one that was like, "This was great because it's going to give her all this publicity." I mean, let's be clear, that position is stupid. It was a spot that she did at a bar show. I'm sure that's going to be a variation on my take, um, and it wasn't going to help her, but it also wasn't going to destroy her career, as the other side was claiming. Here was my take.
it's based on experience. I ran Platinum Championship Wrestling for a number of years. I was part of any number of wrestling shows around the country. I wrestled for years, trained guys, blah, blah, blah. Here's my simple take. It was a show in a bar, and
Mm-hmm.
those don't matter.
Yep.
Let that sink in.
Yes.
It was a wrestling show in a bar, so it does not matter. Whatever you do goes. Now, are there good quality wrestling shows with angles and storylines that go from show to show to show that just happen to film at a bar?
Yes.
Yes. This was not one of those shows.
It's interesting that I did that because little did I know 2 years later I would be going to No Peace Underground, which, except for the last show that I went to where they had their ring for the first time, it's a show that takes place in a bar, but it's still a regarded show because again they do angles and all of that kind of stuff. But for like the one-off bar shows, I mean, it's just not part of the wrestling landscape when you look at quality of shows and work rate and that kind of thing. It just isn't.
Are there shows of a pro wrestling bent that go under all levels of things? Absolutely. And as long as we keep equating everything, then nothing matters.
Mhm.
Let me put it this way. It was a bar in and it was a wrestling show in front of just a bunch of drunk people there to have a good time. It was 21 and over. You tend to do more stupid crap. And anybody who's in the pro wrestling business, who is honest with themselves, who has done those kind of shows, knows they don't matter. Well, but if you record them and then you put it out there, then all of a sudden it matters. No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. The person who watches WWE and nothing else would never see that show.
Hmm.
Um, if there were kids in the audience, especially young girls, and they saw that, there weren't.
Yeah.
Um, when I used to wrestle in Colorado, when I did things with PCW, we did promotional stuff all the time. We would do wrestling shows in car lots to make our sponsors happy, to promote a big show that we would have coming up. Did those shows matter? No.
Wow. I've never heard anybody talk about this. And no wonder I was inspired to kind of do the first full disclosure video. Um, yeah, that's a part of wrestling. And COVID has sort of wiped that out, but it'll come back. And you'll see wrestling shows in parking lots and at state fairs and at little carnivals and all that kind of stuff. And those shows, by and large, don't count. And don't go like, oh, but the exception is, but if Impact doesn't. I'm not talking about those shows. I'm talking about the one-off here. I mean, I used to run a show that took place in a strip club, and those shows did not count. Okay, even if videos of a spot or two got out, it didn't matter. And obviously, with Priscilla Kelly, um, after this took place, she did stuff for AEW, MLW, Ring of Honor. I mean, like, so what are we talking about here? Right?
But they were at a car lot, and they were there to attract attention and to get people to watch. So the content was just so. But did we act a little sillier? Did we act a little dumber? Did we perhaps lose? In fact, that was the only time I got to go over,
That's
was
true.
at these like car lot shows, because again, they didn't matter. So the guys would be like, you never get to win. I'm going to put you over this time. Who cares? It's a car show, right?
Hmm.
Now, juxtapose that.
Yeah, there's this guy that I wrestled many times named Hannibal, and a good friend of mine. And Hannibal certainly went over on me anytime there was a real crowd, but I remember at this car lot show that we did, he was like, you go over, Devil Hell. And I mean, I got the gesture, but we both knew what it was, which was like this show doesn't matter, it doesn't count, so sure, I can win. I don't it was what it was, right?
That logic too. We're at a bar. It's probably a paid show. Maybe it's not. It doesn't really matter. The promoter isn't sitting there. God, I hope they aren't sitting there with a booking sheet going, well, you got to wrestle you, and you got to wrestle you. And remember, we have to do this thing that makes sense. No, it's it's just a performance stripped down to its bare basic. Who can get a big pop out of nothing?
Yeah,
Um, Managers who do bar shows probably say crazy crap they would never say anywhere else.
that's right.
There's probably more fan interaction. You're probably more worried about some drunk idiot getting up and getting involved in the action. Um, I used to run a wrestling show where we got paid and we did it in a strip club.
Oh, ooh,
Did
I
those
talked about the
shows
strip club
matter? No. We got paid to do them. Did we do dumb crap that we would never do otherwise? Absolutely.
thing.
They didn't matter. Nobody looks at those pinup shows that we did in Atlanta, Georgia, and remembers the angle and goes, "Oh,
And so WWA4 people who trained after I wasn't there anymore, those weekly shows that you do, I started those. And for those that got to do the shows at pinups, those were a thing that I started and had them do. I bet you didn't get paid as much as the boys did. I know people will ask. So the boys got anybody who worked one of those shows got $75, but they didn't count. I mean, do we go like Yeah, Shane Marks. Oh, he did really great work in that strip club. That's why he's so good. No. And the fact that guys probably can't remember who went over and who they worked. I mean, because we would just do all kinds of silly crap. We would they wanted more women in the shows, and we didn't have a lot of, we only had Pandora at one point, right? And so I would get friends of mine from like dad's garage improv theaters, and I would just take them through cat fight stuff and so they could come do the show and make a little money, and then they would be happy because some women wrestled and all that kind of shit. We wrestled in front of celebrities too. I mean Dominique Wilkins, Charles Barkley, and all that kind of stuff. Pretty awesome.
Oh my gosh, there was that one time where, whatever crazy stuff that we did. Um, what do you want me to say? When people do wrestling shows at a kid's birthday party, it happens. Do
Yeah,
those matter?
that's a
No.
thing. That's a thing, and especially in Georgia. There's the same kid who always has a wrestling show at his birthday party. Doesn't matter. Doesn't count. And I know people want to take pro wrestling very seriously, and I appreciate that. But if you treat everything as the same thing, then nothing matters, right? If you're an actor, and you do things for the stage or do things for television or movies, I mean, in Atlanta, that's a very common thing now. All three of those things. Um, when you have to take a gig doing a singing telegram, or you have to take a gig, to make ends meet where you're pretending to be a princess. I mean, is it performance? Sure. Does it count on your resume? Yes. Would you use it on your resume to get a certain kind of job? No. And I would say, have things gotten to the point where you would be precluded from having a serious acting job because you had done a non-serious acting job, or one that was just purely a gig that had nothing to do with storytelling, where you were pretending to be Ariel from The Little Mermaid? Of course it wouldn't stop you. And that's what I was saying. People need to look, I mean, these bar shows, they are what they are. And clearly the WWE gets it. I mean, I thought, if anything, what would stop Priscilla Kelly from getting signed was the quality of the ring work, because I think it's not great, but they see the potential in her, and they want to get her in there while she's still young enough, and she's gorgeous, and her ring work is good enough that they feel like they can work with her and make something with her. And same with Elena Black, who's somebody that I've seen on Dark, who I went, she's pretty good, she's not great, but she had a little something. I saw it. I mean, I can go back to those episodes of Dark where I would put her up as performer of the week because I would go like, she's got that thing, and clearly it's true.
Oh. Do bar shows matter that aren't part of some long standing promotion and their angles and blah, 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 blah? No, they don't matter. And if any promotion that has had to do all different kind of shows, I'm not talking about your crap in the VFW hall or whatever your regular gig is, but has to do a gig for money, do they matter? No. And I'll tell you an example on a huge scale,
Okay.
right?
Oh.
WWE does a show, right? WWE does a show where they're bought and paid for in Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
And that card happens, and then people act outraged. Oh, Shane McMahon goes over. Oh, Brock Lesnar wins. Oh, this happens, that happens. That show doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That's the truth. It was bought and paid for and catered to the audience that bought that show, the Saudi Arabians. They bought and paid for it, so they gave them everything they wanted. And that show, though in the grand scheme we pretend it matters, and then it matters in the context of the WWE, but in a sense it really doesn't. So do I equate, as Joey Ryan himself has tried to do with
Hmm.
his penis suplex or whatever,
I
do
like
I
Joey
equate
Ryan.
that to the Priscilla Kelly thing? Not really. If Joey Ryan is on a quote unquote legit pro wrestling show,
Which he was, right? He made it to Impact, and like Ken Shamrock took the penis suplex and things like that. I'm curious what I'll say in light of everything that's happened 2 years since.
where they're trying to build on and they're trying to do more and all that kind of stuff, And he does that suplex, and people take it, including Mick Foley, the whore. How do I feel about that? I guess on one level, I think it's really dumb, and I think it's really stupid. And as a wrestling person, it's whatever. But I gotta say, if he does it on a wrestling show, he brings the wrestling show down to that level. My opinion.
Mm, he brings the wrestling show down to that level. And Joey Ryan himself ran bar wrestling shows. I think that's what they were even called, right? Do those count? No, right? When Ken Shamrock takes the penis suplex, that tells you Impact is a certain kind of show now, doesn't it? Especially in light of everything.
And all of a sudden, that wrestling show doesn't matter. The Priscilla Kelly thing, it's already happening on a show of no consequence that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If they had not done that spot, would anybody care about that show in the slightest, except for the people that were there that can actually remember it the next day? No.
Yeah.
It is a bar show, and it doesn't matter. Kaiju Big Battle does shows
Mm.
in bars. Do they matter? No, because we recognize that Kaiju Big Battle is kind of its own thing. Now, people can get outraged, and people in the wrestling business can go, "Oh my God, it's so terrible."
And by the way, years ago when I went to Kaiju Big Battle when they came to Florida, the people that wrestled on that show would shock you because it's a lot of people who are on Impact, a person or two that's in WWE now, and people who are in AEW. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that they're putting on silly costumes and flopping around. It didn't matter. It only matters to guys like Jim Cornette who think that who have no idea, who seemingly have forgotten. I mean, are you telling me that those guys were never part of promotional shows or bar shows? Of course they were. And they probably did shit that they, if called on it, they would be embarrassed about now. But it didn't matter. And it didn't matter for Priscilla Kelly, did it?
It's performance. Pro wrestling is a performance based art.
Mm,
And that means you're going to have everything from the lowest brow to the highest brow. And the venue, the situation, and all of that factor into how it is judged.
wow. Um, I'm glad I did this right from the first one because context matters. Context matters a lot. And if we don't understand that, right? Because nobody is allowed to say, okay, anything around Brody Lee right now, we're just going to allow. And you know what? That makes sense because the context matters. Um, that we want to give -1 Brody Lee Jr. and this family, we want to give them these moments. We want them to allow them to have them. Now, if they continue to do stuff with -1 week after week, is it going to eventually it's going to pull down AEW down to the level of things are so silly and nothing is concrete, so nothing matters if they're not careful. In fact, they're already flirting with that line, in my opinion. And this is just me being honest. But if it stops now, then cool, it was a great moment. And like the Brody Lee tribute show is a great example, right? Um, did they advance the wrestling? Did they? Dude, context. We're just going to let that thing be the beautiful thing that it was. And it doesn't affect anybody. It doesn't hurt anybody's career. It doesn't help anybody's career. Okay? Yeah.
A cover band,
Mm,
an exclusive cover band, um, playing at the Grammys or the Metropolitan or something like that would be deemed crappy, and rightfully so. A cover band playing in a bar, why not?
yeah.
Why not? Think about what you have watched in a bar before, what you could imagine a bar getting away with showing on a television. Have you ever been in a bar or a strip club where they showed porn? Bet you have. Um, Distasteful, blah, 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 whatever. At the end of the day, it's just a bar. And the wrestling is secondary to the reason that the people are at the bar.
That's
That's the
important too.
truth. When people go to a pro wrestling show and it's really the reason that they're there, that's a different thing altogether. When pro wrestling is just used as a backdrop of entertainment for the whatever else is going on in the main gig of the place, the shows just don't matter. Is that hard?
So the second most I ever got paid to do a wrestling thing was to run this thing. So it was Avalux, I think. It was whatever company like that was under the umbrella of like Bear Aspirin and all this kind of stuff. And they're having their big sales meeting in Atlanta at that convention center. So it's 2,000 salesmen. So I found two wrestlers that were similar in build to two of their salespeople, a woman and a man. And the thing was like, we're gonna go back and we're gonna fight the competition. And they went back and then they just did the switcheroo with the two wrestlers. And then those two wrestlers came out and worked a little thing. It was stupid and it was awesome because we actually like opened, or actually Mike Ditka opened for us, so like I got to meet him and all this kind of stuff, and I got paid a crap ton of money to do this thing. Did that show matter? No, but the money was real. And if footage came out of that, I'm like, oh look, Stephen Platinum was a part of this thing because I think I dressed up in like a pimp suit and was the evil manager, so I could talk on the mic and all this kind of stuff. Like it didn't matter. And like, would Jim Cornette, if let's say that I had made it as in a managerial capacity in wrestling, would have been like, oh, he did this degrading thing for money, and he did this silly thing. Um, he's dressed like a pimp. That's terrible. It's like didn't matter.
Hard for people to swallow? Absolutely. But there's a marked difference between this show and that spot, the tampon spot. By the way, for people who think that that might be real in any way, shape, or form, you're a moron. Okay. Um, People are there at a bar to be at a bar. Now, wrestling might be an attraction. They might have a band there that might get a few people to come in, but at the end of the day, people are at a bar to have a night out. And what's happening around them is secondary and incidental. Doesn't mean that there weren't people who were there for that express purpose to see it, but here's my assurance to you. There weren't people who went to that bar who were intense fans of that promotion that were shocked by what happened. I came here expecting an amazing show with nuanced storytelling, and what I got was salacious. Bar wrestling shows are salacious.
Oh,
People
here's a
swear
good
on the
distinction.
microphone. People do crazy spots. People do all kinds of ridiculous things because wrestling, when it is there, it's not about complex, woven, emotionally engaging storytelling. It's about having a good time and getting a big reaction and being salacious. When we did wrestling shows at a strip club, they were about being entertaining and salacious. And you would be a fool to not accommodate the audience in those shows. So that's my take. You may disagree, and you're welcome to go in the comments and say whatever you want to. But at the end of the day, I've been a part of wrestling for a lot of years and done
Old.
shows for all kinds of reasons. To provide entertainment while people were waiting in line for Atlanta Zombie Apocalypse,
Oh, that's right.
to do shows in a strip club because it was a paid gig, to do shows here, there, and everywhere for promotion, to make somebody's birthday party a bigger deal.
Well, let me put it in this context. So those shows that we did for Atlanta Zombie Apocalypse eventually led to Monstrosity Championship Wrestling, which I was involved with early. But at one point when they were letting drunken motherfuckers wrestle in the ring and risk getting hurt, I completely disavowed myself of it. Right? That's where my integrity line was. Now, a number of people did those monstrosity wrestling shows, which were like salacious and ridiculous and sexual, and people wrestled invisible men and all this kind of crap, right? Did it matter? No. Are there guys who are signed right now with a big promotion who are part of those shows? Yes. Did they do things as contextually bad as Priscilla Kelly pulling out a tampon and Shakespeareing it into some other girl's mouth at a bar show? Yeah, stuff that would be considered wrestling blasphemy. Wrestling Invisible Men and fucking being drunk and disorderly at a show. And these are guys who are signed, contracted guys. Priscilla Kelly wasn't fucking drunk and high when she did that. So, in a sense, she respected the business more than these guys who are pros. There's some context for you.
Is it the same as the promotion that I ran? No. Did I treat it exactly the same? Not at all, because I'm not a moron. Even the most serious singers at the end of the day, even singers who make a crap ton of money, you would be shocked at the gigs that they take.
Oh,
They hide it. I see it in Orlando all the time. Even guys who make millions of dollars and are doing movies, and at the end of the day, McDonald's waves some money, a million or two, and guess what? Katy Perry shows up and she
that's
sings a
right.
few songs at their convention. Guess what? Justin Timberlake will do it too. Guess what? Even the singers that you think are the most honorable and would never, they do it. Now, what kind of songs do they do? Do they take them super seriously? Do they pull this emotion out of themselves? Or do they just give that audience what they want? Do they banter on the mic a little bit and act stupid? Guess which one they do. And there are bands of all kinds. And have bands done all kinds of horrible, crazy, weird things, especially at shows that were, say, in a bar? Absolutely. Pro wrestling is no different. As long as people in wrestling think everything pro wrestling has to be treated like this precious Fabergé egg, guess what? That egg broke a long time ago. And now people are just getting in where they fit in. Do I want to see the pulling the tampon spot out at a quote unquote regular wrestling show? Probably not. Then again, maybe if they did, I'd watch the shit again.
um, Congratulations to Priscilla Kelly. Congratulations to Elena Black and the other people that got signed. And all the best to the wrestlers watching this right now. Go get fucking signed. And do what you got to do to make money within reason. It's a whole different world out there. And I, for one, this is one of those changes that has happened in wrestling that I'm glad about. Because especially in light of COVID, like, if you had an OnlyFans, should that make it so you could never do a thing in pro wrestling? It's ludicrous. Anyway, let me get this bad boy up. Have a good day, y'all.